Today we have a real treat as it falls on the floor. We've been ordering seeds for our garden, and we've been ordering things by mail, and Karen said to me, this is pretty funny, another pack of seeds came. It must be very heavy. Well, I got to show this. You can't make this up. You can't plan this. You can't write jokes for Johnny Carson. It comes in exactly the same package the seeds come. This is our foot pegs for the FZR that have a rubber piece on top. And I'll tell a little story about how this evolved, but basically we have a couple little things left on this bike, and I'm trying to finish them up before the summer's over. But things have gotten in the way. Luciano's accident, Karen's back surgery, and I've gotten this big interest in my growing zinnias, and I thought I had another pack of seeds. So how funny is this? Motorcycle parts, seeds. I don't know what universe that person was born in. So just let me back up just a minute or two. Basically all the modern sport bikes have solid aluminum pegs. Some of the old ones do. Some of these already have aftermarket parts on them. They're relatively easy to switch out. There's a couple little do's and don'ts. That's the purpose of this video. There's some things that really are difficult to figure out, and some are pretty simple. I always try to go back like Kevin Cameron does and give a little history of my history with foot pegs. Of course, in the old days, everybody had rubber-mounted foot pegs. Later in, as bikes like this evolved, they mounted the holder of the foot peg in rubber, which an RD has, and then they put rubber on top of the foot peg. That killed a lot of vibration. Well, all the modern bikes that are supposed to be road bikes and supposed to be comfortable, well, they always have rubber on the foot pegs, and it takes a little bit of the buzzing out, or I'm not sure how much, but I know it has to be in your favor. Now the 750 came with these pegs, and yeah, they're okay, but they're very slippery. I never was really happy with them. I kind of like the ones like this that have teeth, and I've sharpened these teeth up with a Dremel tool to make them even stickier. But even that, you still get a certain amount of vibration comes through because you don't have a coating of rubber on it, that little rubber sleeve on top. Now the FZR has always had a little bit of a buzz in the pegs at certain RPMs, and it comes and goes. It's resonant vibration. It's not there all the time, but there are certain RPM ranges where it vibrates, and it can be annoying on a long trip. If you're right in the range that it's vibrating and you got to ride a half an hour at that speed or that RPM, can be annoying. And these are the pegs that came with this bike. Almost all of the sport bikes come with the pegs that fold. They go up, they go down. There's a little spring inside. It's made this way so if you drag the peg, some of them have that little feeler foot. If you drag the peg, it doesn't catch and just, you know, maybe even deep six you off the bike. So this is a nice feature. Now, when you go to get aftermarket pegs, you'll notice this angle can be facing back, or it can be facing straight up. This is an old-fashioned bike. It's facing straight up. The more modern bikes, it goes back on about a 40-degree angle. But it's this dimension here when you order these, because you don't really order a set of pegs for an FZR. You order a universal set of pegs that has this dimension. And usually, if you order ones that are too wide, you have to grind them on a grindstone, kind of a pain in the neck if you don't have to do it. The more modern ones have, instead of a bolt, with a nut. Now what happens with this, the nut can back out. They have clips, they have lock nuts, there's a million different ways. I don't know, I didn't even open a package to these ones that we bought, but they're about 10 bucks. So, but what they have is that nice piece of rubber on here, which I think is going to be an upgrade. Now what I'm trying to do with the bike, in the final stages of this, let's call it this restoration that I'm working on, I'm trying to take care of all little details that you'd never even think would be a problem until you ride the bike a lot. And then you say, yeah, I could make that a little better. I could make this a little better. I call that the detail upgrades. One little detail upgrade that we shared, these levers were about 20 bucks, fully adjustable. This was a nice upgrade. This was one I would say worth its weight. I got rid of that big giant, and it was really an ugly thing, this giant, the reservoir for the brake fluid, and this was about 15 bucks. So, you know, you can figure this out. None of these things are really expensive. They're not high, you know, super high dollar things, and when you do them, you say, wow, why didn't I do that sooner? And one of the upgrades that worked really great were those super bright LED bulbs that they just worked out great. Again, they were about 10 bucks a piece. They're called switchback bulbs. The sprocket and the Regina chain that Vlad got me, a really nice upgrade over what we had on the bike for 5, maybe more years. I don't even know. But again, this is going to be a relatively simple swap out, but there are things, and again, that dimension there is a critical dimension. If they're too small, I guess you could put a washer in there. I'm hoping these are going to fit perfectly. Well, yeah, that's always the hope, but there's always some little gremlin hiding whenever you work on a motorcycle. And I've said this a million times, the biggest upgrade in the last year that I've made to most of the motorcycles was to get mirrors that you could see out of. I've gotten so comfortable and so happy with those mirrors, and again, I wish I did it years ago. So step one is what I always call the unboxing, and these come in packages that look just like seed packages. I don't know how funny that is. Maybe you don't think it's funny at all, and maybe you're right. Anyway, like most inexpensive aftermarket parts, comes in a little pack and is, of course it's in Chinese, or I don't know, maybe that's Japanese, I don't even know. Well, let's see what we got for 10 bucks. And always free shipping. Always. Okay, so these don't have a bolt, but of course you could retrofit a bolt. They come with the springs. They look pretty much like the stock would be. They have the little feeler feet that you can screw on. That would probably be step one, I guess. Screw on the feeler feet. And that's supposed to give you a little warning if these are starting to drag. Now look how nice these are made. They actually are made pretty nice. And they're, let's see, they're riveted on, so I guess you can't get the rubber parts off easily, which I guess is a good thing. And of course, keep in mind another thing, there is a left and there is a right. So that again, I don't know how critical this is all going to be in the very end of this, because it looks like these things are on an angle. I don't know if that's going to mean that we can't use them or we can use them on another bike, and that's why we make the videos. Now the idea of this is that you get the spring in here, and this usually gets to be a little tricky, assuming this fits, and you want this to be that it's going to line up like so. You're going to put the rod in, and then when you go to move this up, that spring is going to push it back. So let's take the old peg off and see if these fit. Again, it's a relatively straightforward job. We're doing it on a day it's raining outside, so I really can't ride anyway. But I really want to see how this rubber, I think, is going to make all the difference in the world. It'll get rid of all of the buzz. Now, during the restoration, when I put these back, I was very careful to Loctite everything in place. Right now, I don't want to put a socket in here and scratch up that pipe, so I'm being kind of careful. At some point in time, the Loctite has worked off the nut, and we can get this out of here. And as I said, this is pretty simple, and you could always, if you're not comfortable with those studs, you could easily just retrofit in a bolt. That would be a problem. It wouldn't be a problem at all. And we're going to see how these work out. And if not, we'll use them on one of the other bikes. That's the nice thing about inexpensive parts. You don't have to have a heart attack. If they don't fit, you use them up on something else. All right, so once this is out, this part is going to spring right out. Now, I don't want to lose the spring or the shims or anything. Now, one thing you can do if you have nice tiny little fingers is just put this piece in so that the whole area for the spring is open. Let's just see if this is our lucky day. I know what you're thinking, it's never your lucky day. And if we can get that jammed down there and then push this pin through, that'll be very nice. There it goes. And there you are. Now these face forward a little more than I thought they would, but the rubber is touching your foot and your foot is actually going down. So that may be exactly the right thing and the feeler feet are in the right spot, and I just have to put the clip on the end. I don't think I need, maybe I'll put a washer in there eventually. I don't know. That looks like it's going to be fine. There's a little circlip on the end, and we got one side done. So this is the little circlip that holds that on, and that can in itself can sometimes be tricky to get on. So I see my big fat fingers don't fit in there, so I may have to use needle nose pliers. There we go. And it's got just the perfect action. We've got the rubber, should be good traction, and it's facing forward just enough. It looks like when you're on the brake, that's when you really wouldn't want your foot slipping around anyway. So that may be a small upgrade and a one small step for mankind, I don't know, but just one more little modification for our little FZR restoration. $10. And as I have said many, many times, it's always impressive to me when you get a bike from somebody else who, and obviously we don't even know how many people owned this bike before us, and you start taking it apart and you find out, what the hell is that? Wow. Not everybody, well, I have seen some funny things. Even the bikes Luciano bought years ago, we took them apart and found some anomalies, I guess is the right word, but maybe people take my old bikes apart, but I don't sell any bikes, so that's the problem. Nobody can ever criticize me. They never see my dirty laundry. Anyway, we're going to get this other side done here momentarily, and since it's not a riding day, we'll just get the bike ready for its next turn in the pitching rotation and see how these work. I think they're going to be fine. And again, that whole thing I always say is, when you get parts that work and they're inexpensive, great. Now, if I like these, I can just order another set right from the same supplier, in fact. They came in 5 working days, so there's no downside to this at all. Now, I know a lot of times that I've done a job where there's 2 sides or 2 parts or whatever. The first one takes X amount of time, and the second one, because you already know some little shortcut or some little trick, it can go a lot faster. In this case, it's so quick it doesn't even matter. We will get this done. We'll be done here very soon, in fact. And it looks like this is the only trick I've found that's worth having, is to press that spring down, even with a screwdriver. I guess you could press that down with your bare hand. Now, I don't have fingers that are small enough to get down there, but I'm sure the trick would be there you go. It kind of sticks then in some position, and once you can get the bolt to go through it. Again, that is the only trick. I'm going to go get a little screwdriver and just pry that, and I bet it's going to go right there. In fact, it's going in without that. So see, you can do it even without that. But I'm always trying to look for a way to just make it a little bit easier. Yeah, it would be easier if I just took a screwdriver and pried that over, and if I have to, tap it with a rubber hammer. So it can be tricky. It might take a little practice, but certainly there's no part of this that's rocket science. That's for sure. When I'm all done with this, I'll put a little bit of chain wax on it so it's nice and free moving, but that's about as nice as it's going to get. I think this is probably overkill, but I always like things to be nice and free moving. And I think that's going to be, actually when I look at this, having that slanted forward is going to probably be
a little bit better in terms of your feet are always angled forward anyway. They're not, your feet don't lay flat like that, that's for sure. And we'll see if this works out.
So it's another one of those small things that make a bike more enjoyable, and in this case it's part of the bike rider interface. Anything that where your body touches, the levers, the seat, the pegs, those interfaces, when they're not comfortable, takes the fun out of riding a bike. In this case, for $10, I'm sure we got something that's better than what we had before. And the good news, if we don't, we can put it right back the way we had it before. Always the best modification when you don't have to cut the frame or drill a hole or do something that you can't undo if you don't like it. So anyway, the FZR, again, there's still a few little details that just seem to be endless. Every time I ride the bike, I come up with something like the levers, and I knew the mirrors were going to be a giant upgrade, but I think these pegs are going to work out great. Again, it was a very easy job. Getting a spring in without having to take your fingernail off is about as hard as it gets. Other than that, very easy $10 job you can do, anybody can do. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.